with a pileup of sexual assault allegations overwhelming Hollywood and the ending the careers of prominent industry figures such as Harvey Weinstein and James Toback. The last thing the entertainment industry needed was yet another major scandal. And yet, with the most recent allegations against House of Cards star and Academy Award winner Kevin Spacey, what originally appeared to be a highly pervasive problem with just misogyny and secrecy may be morphing into a problem with pedophilia, as well as sheer run-of-the-mill harassment, rape, and all-around creepiness. Now, if only some intrepid insiders or journalists had the wherewithal to pursue these leads and get to the bottom of this looming scandal. Believe it or not, some have. But since its release in 2015, you probably haven't heard of An Open Secret, a documentary about Hollywood's rampant child abuse problem that until this past week was shut out by all major studios and industry players, but has now gone viral in light of recent headlines. To discuss what filmmakers found and the reactions they've encountered, we were earlier joined by entertainment lawyer and executive producer Matt Valentinas.
A friend of mine named Gabe Hoffman, who's a fellow producer on this project, we were discussing trying to do a documentary on boxing, of all things. He's a boxing fan. And then Gabe decided he wanted to do something that was going to help women or children who've been exploited sexually, because he's done well on Wall Street and he wanted to give back. So after about 6 or 12 months, we decided we wanted to do something on Hollywood. I had lived out there for about 8 years, working in business affairs, and had heard a lot of rumors. And we knew that while this issue of sexual abuse is obviously worldwide and national, that it was even more so exaggerated in Hollywood, and that if we could bring attention to it in Hollywood, it would bring greater attention to it around the world. So that's sort of the reason why we chose Hollywood. We thought we'd get more support from Hollywood once we started bringing things out, and it kind of turned out to be the opposite.
That's very interesting.
I think the question a lot of people are asking at this point is, are these isolated cases? Obviously, with all of the stories that have come out since the Harvey Weinstein story was revealed, we've had, Brett Ratner today, a number of other people. We understand sort of the harassment of women, the sexual assault of women in this situation, but how pervasive is the exploitation and predation of children in the entertainment industry?
Extremely. We've just had several victims reach out to us in the last 72 hours. I just literally got a call 10 minutes before I came on the air today. It's very, very deep in Hollywood, and it's a very organized system. They have scouts. There's a hierarchy to it. I'm not talking some weird conspiracy. I'm just talking that these people all work in circles together, and they're highly organized, and people need to wake up and realize that. This isn't just a few random instances of some lone pedophile. These guys all run in the same circles, and they need to be exposed, and some of them are very powerful and very wealthy.
Was it what you expected going in? Did you expect it to be as pervasive? Because even if you work in the entertainment industry, there are rumors like there were with Harvey, but it's always a piece of the truth. Did you expect it to be as pervasive, as bad as you discovered?
We expected it to be more pervasive than in normal society, but we didn't expect it to be this pervasive. And by pervasive, I don't mean the actual pedophiles. I mean the people that knew about it and did nothing, or maybe the people that heard rumors and did nothing, or the people that even just heard whispers and did nothing. That was the most disappointing thing. A lot of it came down to people saying, oh, we support you, but we can't help you, or we believe you, but we can't do anything. And that was really the most disappointing thing about this, is the lack of leadership in Hollywood. And I think that's because institutionally, no one's really in power long enough to address the problem. Everyone's just trying to hold on to their jobs, and different administrations come and go at the networks. And this just kind of gets kicked, the can gets kicked down the road. But there really needs to be a full purging and a full outing of the people that do this, and there needs to be a change of leadership in the industry.
I couldn't agree with you more. One of the most captivating parts of your of this documentary is you confront an alleged perpetrator, and through that confrontation, you discover he admits to you that these types of crimes were committed on him when he was a young man starting out in the industry. You know, I would say it almost seems like it's this generational or learned behavior that's passed down. Is that the trend in your investigations in making this? Is that what we're kind of seeing in Hollywood, that it's this kind of generational problem that's been passed down, you know, executive to executive, and that this kind of attack on children?
Absolutely, and I don't want to expose a person's name yet, but I just received a call before I came on. The person you're referencing is Michael Hara in our film, is the man who says that he was probably molested. Well, I was just contacted by a man who was I don't want to give out too much information, but who was molested by Michael Hara way back in the 60s before he even came to Hollywood. And he wants to talk about that and all the young kids that experienced that. And this film is bringing out his memory of that. And thankfully, he's an investigative type of person, and he's a good writer. So I think we're going to learn a lot more about that. And we're also been receiving tips from people who sort of run on the fringes of these groups, who've been invited to do things and have turned them down. And I think a lot of people are starting to flip, right? I think a lot of people are starting to come out and realize we need to do something about this. People in the community itself, they're realizing that this isn't normal behavior. I think in Hollywood it's considered normal. It's considered just the way things are supposed to be. I mean, I found myself talking to a group of college students just the other day, telling them how they have to be thick-skinned because, you know, I worked several internships unpaid for a couple of years, and, you know, people in the industry can be abusive, you know, with words and with actions. And I think we all need to be more sensitive about putting some more civility in the industry and making it more professional. You know, the industry, it's run by corporations, but it's not really corporate. A lot of where these kids are being molested, it's not on the set, it's off the set. You know, it's in places that have nothing really to do with the studio, even though they're introduced to these pedophiles through a television network or a movie.
I think that's a great point you made, that a lot of this occurs more off the set and in the culture and outside of, you know, the working day to day. Not that it hasn't happened in situations like that, but, you know, it is in that kind of, you know, the outside of the actual 9 to 5 that you work in Hollywood. But like you said, it's kind of looked at, maybe the rumor gets out, maybe whatever, but then it's just kind of accepted, which is really what's truly frightening. Yeah,
one of the things, as these stories have come out, obviously, you know, looking at this as a child, I can't imagine, because as a grown woman, when I got into the business at 22, 23 years old, as you said, you've got to get a thicker skin. You've got to understand. You learn people will scream at you, people will yell at you, that you will be treated in a way that would not be acceptable anywhere else in any kind of corporate atmosphere, but it's kind of what you have to do. And do you think there's a way to bring some of that protections for people on set, for everyone to feel somewhat that they aren't going to be disbelieved, that they aren't going to be blackballed from the industry if they speak? Do you think there's a way to, you know, what can we do specifically to empower people to speak?
Well, I think there's going to be two things. The first way that we can empower people to speak is places like the Screen Actors Guild need to have hotlines, offices, certified skilled professionals dealing with this, rather than trying to hide it under the cover. The Screen Actors Guild actually threatened us and tried to censor our own film when they should be out there helping us. They should have been sponsoring screenings. They should be educating their young actors about how the industry works. They should be validating all these managers and talent agents. Just last week, you saw Tyler Grasham from APA, one of the leading child agents in the business, you know, representing kids from It and Stranger Things, was fired for inappropriate behavior. And people need to look into all these agents and managers and publicists that work together, and who puts who on what shows, and What executive producers work with what agents? There needs to be more of an internal, the studios and the networks need to police themselves better. But I think the second part to that answer is, I think it's the Netflixes, the Amazons, the Googles, the Facebooks. I think they're just going to come in and clean house, because I don't think the studios are going to change fast enough. I don't think the networks are going to be able, I don't think their cultures can adapt quick enough. The ship has probably sailed. I think this is going to be bigger than the church scandal. There are going to be so many cases that come out from this that I think the studios and the networks are going to be in lawsuits for the next 20 years.
Wow.
Do you think, because one of the hardest things to understand, and one of the hardest reasons that, especially in Hollywood, actresses and people don't, and children and their families don't report, is because even if someone is arrested, even if someone is, they seem to be able to sort of rape, pay, and run. And they get away with it, or they're right back to work working on children's shows or something else later. Do you think there'll be a difference in that Hollywood power structure that's so lax on punishment? Do you think there'll be a second coming for Harvey Weinstein, for the Kevin Spaceys, for the names that will hopefully come out in these child sexual assault rings? Do you think they'll be able to come back from this?
I think a lot of that relates to the non-disclosure agreements and a lot of the settlements. I mean, a lot of what we found in this was settlements. A lot of these cases end in settlements. And there's a lot of settlements out there that I'm sure a lot of reporters in Los Angeles know about if they could just dig up a little bit. I mean, that's probably been the most shocking thing to us, is obviously what we put in the film is maybe 1/10 of what we know, because we don't want to be sued, and everything we put in there has been validated and cleared by a dozen lawyers, But there's other things that we would love to pass on to reporters, that if they just spent a couple hours looking into things, if they spent a couple hours asking questions, like, has anyone asked Bryan Singer, do you have settlements with anybody? Has anyone asked him that? Ask Marty Singer, Bryan Singer's attorney. Did Bryan Singer settle with anyone? No one's asked, and no one wants to ask. That's the thing. Nobody in Hollywood wants to ask the tough questions because it's going to cost them a lot of money. We're talking about the X-Men franchise, right? I'm not saying Bryan Singer has done anything wrong. I'm just saying Bryan Singer has associated himself with several convicted pedophiles. So, and those are the ones that we know of. What if there are others? I can't imagine the Ford Motor Company running itself like that.
Hollywood, in my experience with it, it's kind of like high school with money. It's very cliquey. It's very, there's all these different kind of groupings of people, and you don't know that, like, oh, this party I went to, I brushed shoulders with this person who's then connected to this person. Right. And you either directly know that somebody's doing something wrong or you don't, but I understand where people are like, ooh, I don't want to say anything because, wow, I knew that guy really well. I worked with that person really well. What if I get painted with that brush too? And I think people are far too frightened and timid of the honesty they should be. And the other thing that really shocks me is, like you said about the journalism, you document how a lot of these crimes or these stories are even killed by the editors and publishers of newspapers and magazines, even after a lot of due diligence is put in to prove that they happen. Why does the news media, do you believe, go to sleep on this? Is this because they're also owned by the studios that are doing business with these people, or why does the news media kind of, at least up until now, didn't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole?
I think it's because the wall between entertainment and media broke down somewhere in the 80s, and it's just gotten worse and worse. I don't think it's that the reporters don't want to report, but I think the editors are being pressured about liability. A lot of stories are being killed. And really, if you look at most of the newspapers, they're all owned by corporations that you're reporting on. So if I know something's wrong at Fox Studios and I go to Fox News, I know they're not interacted, but somewhere along the line, somebody is going to kill something. And we've experienced a lot of that. And that's why I think you're also seeing a lot of new media break some of these stories. And also, we've found that we've had to rely on international media to come out with some of these stories. I mean, the English media has been better than the American media in a lot of ways. And the trades should be disgusted and disappointed in themselves. There's a few good reporters we've been working with, but when you look at a guy like Peter Bart, who ran Variety for 20 years, are you telling me Peter Bart didn't hear anything about Harvey Weinstein?
Right.
Come on.
That's a great point.
You know?
It's a great point.
Yeah,
I mean, they got to be. I mean, look, I understand it's an industry and you're a trade magazine, but you should at least have a wall. There should be some real reporters there who are willing to break some news. And some of these different trades, they don't want to report on. They put it under gossip when actually it's crime.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is actually one of those things that I feel like there's the idea that because you're in the entertainment business, you made a choice. That you made a choice to be put in this situation, that you knew what could happen, but that doesn't seem fair since we don't know what really happened. With Harvey, we thought he was a womanizer. You know, we thought he was a skeevy dude. We didn't think he was a rapist, a multiple predatory rapist, and that, you know, that's the sort of thing that I think learning how these things happen and understanding how to give voice to those voiceless. As a sexual assault survivor myself, that's so hard. It's so hard to talk. And we have to help those people so much, which I think your film does, which brings me to so many filmmakers are fighting just to get a distribution deal. We're all, you know, that they're trying so hard just to get people to look at their stuff and get paid for it, that over the last 2 weeks, you chose to release your film in the light of the Harvey Weinstein allegations on Vimeo. What about the story and what about this made you want to release this for free?
I was up at a television festival up in Vermont, and then as soon as the Harvey Weinstein story broke, I called Gabe, because we'd been sitting on this for a while. We knew something like this was going to happen, because we know there's settlements and other things out there that haven't been reported that are going to have to break eventually. And another thing about pedophiles, they can't stop, right? So we knew, we didn't think it would take 2 years, but we knew something like this would happen. So as soon as it happened with Harvey, we knew that was our opportunity. And really what we want to do is, you know, just last night I reached out to Amazon, to Netflix, to YouTube, and to Facebook, and I said, look, guys, one of you pick this up. We've gotten 6 or 7 million views already with no publicity, right? If a Netflix picks this up, it can get 20 to 30 or 40 million views, and they can really put it out properly. I mean, Gabe and I have full-time jobs. I have a small law office. He runs a hedge fund. We're just trying to keep this going until someone picks up the mantle here, and we're hoping that one of the big networks does and gets this out to people in the proper way. And we have so much more information to hand off that we'd love to give this to, you know, reporters. I've reached out to so many reporters with so much information. I'm sure they're all being overwhelmed with people coming to them right now.
What?
But ultimately our goal is to get this on a Netflix or an Amazon where people can see it, because all the profits from this film, if we make any profits, are going to a charity to help sexual abuse survivors.
And the more people that
we're
see
not
it,
making a dime off this film.
Exactly,
right?
and the more people that see it, the more people can feel empowered to speak out for their own problem, you know, their own issues and the things that have happened.
And this
in
is
their
a
lives.
drop. I mean, I think Netflix is spending $6 billion on development this year. You telling me they can't spend a couple million to pick up a documentary?
Well, I certainly hope that they do. Matthew Valentinas, I want to thank you very much for coming on today. One of the producers of An Open Secret. Great film. Definitely people should check it out. And I hope you get picked up, and I hope that this is the beginning of a very happy ending to a very sad, sad story. Thank you so much, sir.
I appreciate you having me. Labas.